Hey y'all, welcome back. This one's not just another video, it's personal. I've loved Superman since I was knee high to a grasshopper. He wasn't just a comic book character, he was the kind of man I wanted to be. Strong, decent, unshakable, the kind of man who stood for something even when the world didn't. He was a country boy who grew up on a farm in a small town. He was humble, respectful, a gentleman, and when the world felt dark, he was a symbol of hope. Superman wasn't just fiction. He was an ideal, something worth striving for. And maybe that's why it stings to see what he's become. So today we're talking about what really happened to Superman. The rise, the fall, and the truth nobody else wants to say. In 1940, a wartime poll revealed that Superman was more recognizable to American children than the president. Today, some don't even know his name. Not because he failed us, not because we rewrote him to fit our failures. He stood for truth, justice, and hope. Now he's either a tyrant, a punchline, or forgotten entirely. This isn't evolution, it's erasing an icon. Ask yourself this: what happens when the symbol that once lifted an entire generation begins to mean nothing? What happens when the man who once inspired millions to believe in doing the right thing, no matter the cost, is rewritten to fit a darker, more cynical world? There was a time when Superman's silhouette alone meant something. The red cape, the confident stride, the unwavering heart, a beacon for anyone who felt small, weak, or hopeless. For over 85 years, Superman has been the most iconic figure in American mythology. He wasn't just the first superhero, he was the gold standard. But in recent years, the world that once drew strength from his virtue has started tearing it apart, twisting his story, softening his moral spine, and replacing inspiration with bitterness. This is the full story from creation to cultural cornerstone to calculated corruption. Superman was created in 1933 by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, two sons of Jewish immigrants from Cleveland. The original version of Superman was a villain in a short story titled The Reign of the Superman, a bald telepath with godlike powers and a thirst for domination. But the concept didn't feel right. Over time, they reworked him into a symbol of hope, a refugee from a dying world raised in Kansas who uses powers not to rule but to serve. In 1938, Action Comics #1 introduced this new Superman to the world. He didn't fly yet. He could leap an eighth of a mile, outrun a train, and lift a car. And more importantly, he fought not aliens, but wife beaters, slumlords, corrupt businessmen, and crooked politicians. He was a champion of the common man, a blue-collar hero during the Great Depression, created to punch back against injustice, not embody corporate interest. Superman had unimaginable power, but he always chose restraint. That was the key. Raised by Jonathan and Martha Kent in Smallville, he wasn't taught to dominate or intimidate. He was taught humility and that being strong meant protecting those who can't protect themselves. The S on his chest eventually became more than just a symbol. Within lore, it evolved into the Kryptonian symbol for hope. In reality, it was a beacon of morality. Superman was the moral North Star, not because he was perfect, but because he chose to do what was right even when it hurt. Writers gave him weaknesses like kryptonite, not just for dramatic effect, but because it reminded us that even the strongest man can be brought low. It was never just about strength, it was about the strength of his character. Originally, Superman could leap tall buildings, run faster than a speeding bullet, and was more powerful than a locomotive. But he evolved. In the Fleischer cartoons of the 1940s, animators wanted more visual flair and made him fly, a change that became permanent. Over the decades, his powers expanded, flight, super strength, heat vision, X-ray vision, telescopic and microscopic vision, freeze breath, super speed, invulnerability, super hearing, and even healing factors. At one point, he could even move planets and survive in the heart of the sun. Writers even experimented with weird or forgotten powers, amnesia kiss, ventriloquism, solar flares, and once splitting into two electric blue and red Supermen. At another point, exposure to a kryptonite meteor granted him immunity to it in certain lighting conditions. Kryptonite itself came from the radio show to give the voice actor time off. Eventually, it took on multiple forms. Green weakens him physically. Red causes bizarre behavior or personality shifts. Gold removes his powers permanently. Blue affects Bizarro. And black splits him into good and evil. With all these powers, the best stories were the ones that showed his internal battles, his restraint, his compassion, his refusal to become what he could so easily be. Contrast that with portrayals like Injustice or Zack Snyder's Man of Steel, where Superman is forced to kill or becomes a dictator. These versions strip away the core of his character. That strength means nothing without moral clarity. The true Superman was never about domination. He was about discipline, the will to never cross a line. In All-Star Superman, when Lex Luthor finally gains Superman's powers, Superman still chooses compassion, saving him rather than fighting him. In The Man Who Has Everything, when placed in a dream world by Mongol, he must make the heart-wrenching decision to leave a perfect illusion of family, life, behind in order to return to a world that needs saving. In Justice League Unlimited, he admits, "I feel like I live in a world made of cardboard, always taking constant care not to break something or someone, never allowing myself to lose control even for a moment or someone could die." These moments weren't about what Superman could do, they were about what he chose not to do. That's where the real power always was. And that's the exact thing characters like Homelander and Omni-Man spit on. They flaunt their power, Superman governs his. That contrast is a line between hope and horror. As Superman's legend grew, so did the universe around him. His mythos expanded through new characters that carried pieces of his legacy or challenged him in new ways. Supergirl, Kara Zor-El, was introduced as Superman's cousin, another survivor of Krypton. Unlike Clark, she arrived on Earth as a teenager, bringing a different lens to the Kryptonian heritage. Over the years, she evolved into a powerful symbol of strength and independence, often representing the immigrant story through a younger, less assimilated perspective. Steel. John Henry Irons was introduced during the reign of Superman, or following Superman's death. A brilliant engineer and former weapons designer, Irons became a superhero inspired by Superman's sacrifice, wearing a suit of armor and wielding a massive hammer. Steel embodied the idea that you don't need powers to be Superman. You need courage and heart. Superboy, Kal-El, was genetically engineered, a clone created from a fusion of Superman's and Lex Luthor's DNA. Originally impulsive, rebellious, he matured into a hero in his own right. His existence raised deep questions about the identity, legacy, and what it means to inherit Superman's mantle. The Eradicator, a Kryptonian AI turned physical being, began a preservation tool for Kryptonian culture, but eventually took on a cold, authoritarian vision of justice. When he temporarily filled Superman's void, he did so with power but without compassion, highlighting how dangerous Superman's powers can be without his heart. These four characters, alongside Lois Lane, who evolved from a damsel to a daring reporter and eventually Clark's wife and mother to his child, it deepened Superman's legacy, showing us the many forms heroism can take. Together, they enforce a central truth of the mythos. Superman isn't just one man, he's an idea. And when he's gone, others rise, not to replace him, but to reflect what he inspired in them. In 1992, DC Comics did the unthinkable. They killed Superman. The story arc, The Death of Superman, I still remember it to this day, the comic book cover, culminated in a brutal battle against a mindless beast named Doomsday. Superman dies in Lois Lane's arms, protecting Metropolis until his last breath. The world mourned. So did the readers. The backlash and the public outcry were enormous. But what followed was just as significant. The world of 4 would-be replacements, each claiming a piece of the Superman legacy. Each reflected a different fragment of who he was. Steel, John Henry Irons, a man inspired by Superman's sacrifice, wielding technology and conviction. He stood for hope without powers, pure heart and will. Superboy, Kal-El, a teenage clone created from Superman and Lex Luthor's DNA. He embodied youth, rebellion, and tension between legacy and identity. Then we have Cyborg Superman, Hank Henshaw, a twisted cybernetic version claiming to be the real Superman, ultimately revealed as a villain seeking destruction. He represented the danger of unchecked power masked as salvation. The Eradicator, a Kryptonian AI who interpreted Superman's ideals in a rigid authoritarian way. Power without compassion, justice without mercy. Eventually, Superman returned, reborn in a black suit powered by the sun. It was a resurrection story with mythic overtones, but it also marked a turning point. Superman was now subject to editorial stunts and sales strategies, no longer just a character rooted in virtue and myth, but a commodity used to spike sales and generate headlines. He wasn't a symbol anymore, he was a stunt. His death became less about narrative meaning and more about shock value. A marketing play that marked a turning point in how industry and the world saw Superman. Less a moral compass and more a brand to manipulate. But the 21st century began to erode the ideal. The first time in 75 years, Superman killed. Not out of necessity, but out of narrative laziness. It wasn't a bold reinvention, it was a betrayal. Fans didn't see a savior, they saw a stranger in a suit. For decades, Superman reminded us who we should be, but now he mirrors who we're afraid we've become: paranoid, jaded, and angry. When the last Boy Scout falls, it doesn't just change fiction, it changes the audience. Man of Steel showed a Superman burdened by guilt, uncertainty, and a body count. Batman vs. Superman turned him into a symbol of division. And Injustice, a popular alternate universe, twisted his morality completely, turning him into a tyrant after the death of Lois Lane. These portrayals weren't simply new interpretations, they were fundamental rewrites of the moral core. When Superman loses restraint, he becomes Homelander. When he loses heart, he becomes Omni-Man. That's not just creative freedom, it's character assassination. Superman once inspired generations, but now culture seems embarrassed by him. Studios say he's too good, too outdated, or not relatable, so they warp him into something edgier. They mock the cape, they question the smile, they treat sincerity like weakness. But here's the truth. Superman isn't hard to write. He's hard to live up to. He demands that the writer believe in goodness and restraint and absolute moral standards. That's a high bar, and one modern media often refuses to reach for. It's easier to parody hope than to protect it. We live in a time that treats integrity like a flaw. Virtue is mocked, not modeled. This is the same Superman who sold war bonds in World War II, who inspired soldiers and children, who made people believe again. But today, that kind of heroism is treated like cringe. And Superman, once a lighthouse in a storm, has become a joke to the very people who once drew strength from him. Yet audiences haven't abandoned Superman. Hollywood has. And when a version finally gets it right, like Tyler Hoechlin's Superman and Superman and Lois, the writers still find a way to erase him. In the final season, they stripped him of his powers and left him to die as a human. No return, no redemption, just gone. That wasn't closure. That was erasing an icon, not just the character. After 3 seasons of portraying the most faithful live-action Superman since Reeve, they closed his chapter by taking away the very thing that made him who he was. That's not storytelling. That's cultural vandalism. The Christopher Reeve films still resonate. All-Star Superman remains one of the most beloved comics ever printed. His presence and animation from the Superman, the animated series, to Justice League Unlimited preserved his heart even when the movies didn't. Superman was the first. Every superhero that followed stands in his shadow. Batman, Captain America, Spider-Man, even characters like Goku all borrowed pieces of his blueprint. He defined what it means to have power and use it with purpose. He wasn't just a character, he was a standard, a reminder that heroism isn't about strength, it's about how you use it. Even now, the biggest cultural icons, Homelander, Omni-Man, The Boys, Invincible, only exist to deconstruct what Superman built. They are shadows cast by his light. But shadows often don't define the sun. They prove its presence. They can copy his powers, they can mimic his costume, but they'll never match his purpose. Because Superman didn't just raise the bar, he is the bar. And when the world needed saving again, it won't call on the imitators. It will look to the original. Because Superman doesn't just save the day, he shows us how to live it. Without Superman, there would be no superhero genre as we know it. He wasn't just the first, he became the template. Batman followed in 1939, built on the opposite idea, no powers, pure intellect. Captain Marvel, Shazam, was so close in concept, DC sued for copyright infringement. Spider-Man, Iron Man, the Hulk, and others all echoed his structure, tragic origin, moral code, dual identity, extraordinary abilities. Superman pioneered the secret identity, the moral code of never killing, the cape and the tights, superhero aesthetics, the archetype of power used for good. Even deconstructions like Homelander or Omni-Man only exist to corrupt what Superman represents. You don't parody the obscure, you parody the gold standard. Here's the shift. What used to be a cautionary tales, dark mirrors of Superman's potential are now mistaken for the ideal. These warped versions of strength aren't just one-offs anymore. They're becoming the new default. Homelander is worshipped in universe despite being a monster. Omni-Man is revered for his brutality. Brightburn paints Superman's origin as a horror story. Each one flips the scripts, power without compassion, dominance without restraint. And now, modern portrayals of Superman himself are starting to bend in their direction. Grim, uncertain, emotionally repressed, sometimes even violent. Not because the story demands it, but because the culture does. What was once the gold standard is now seen as unrealistic, as if morality, restraint, and self-sacrifice are outdated, as if there's no strength in hope. But Superman was never meant to reflect the world. He was meant to challenge it, to inspire it. Every superhero born since owes a piece of their DNA to Superman. He's not just a character, he's the father of the genre. And right now, his children are forgetting their roots. If we lose that foundation, we lose the very thing that made superheroes worth believing in. There's a reason Christopher Reeve's portrayal still resonates. Decades later, when people think of Superman, many still see his calm gaze, hear the sincerity in his voice, and remember a man who stood tall, not just with strength, but with gentleness. In a wheelchair, long after his accident, Reeves still inspired the world. He was a symbol he once portrayed. And now we're being told to trust a new vision again. This time was from James Gunn, the man who called traditional fans part of the problem. The same Hollywood that's mocked the symbol for years is now promising to restore it. But can you resurrect the legacy if you've forgotten what made it matter in the first place? They say it's a return to hope. But unless they remember what that actually means, it'll be just another echo, louder but empty. Ask yourself again, what happens when that symbol begins to mean something once more? We get Superman back. Not because we need nostalgia, but because we need to believe that strength can still serve virtue. That hope still has a cape. There's still time to reclaim the symbol, not for nostalgia, but for what we still have the potential to become. Because Superman isn't outdated. The people writing him are. And unless we fight for what he meant, all we will be left with is a hollow suit and a fading memory. I hope this video means as much to you as it does me, because this was hard to research and hard to look up. But if you've stuck around this long, I thank you. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let me know what you think. And if you like this video, please subscribe. And I'll see y'all in the next one.